After 2 years of late nights, I finally launched my app and threw a launch party. My family didn't show up. They all went to celebrate Ezra's promotion instead. Minutes after everyone left, Dad texted, "We need to talk about your company." Mom wrote, "This isn't a real career." Ezra added, "Congrats on your little project." I just replied, "Watch tomorrow's news." You know that feeling? The one where you've poured your entire soul into something, bled for it, almost died for it, and just when you're about to claim your victory, your own family tries to steal it right out from under you. That's my story. And let me tell you, the sting of betrayal from the people who are supposed to be your biggest cheerleaders cuts deeper than any professional failure ever could. For 2 relentless years, my life was my app. I'm Jake, 28, and I'd sacrificed everything. I quit a steady job, drained my savings, practically lived on instant noodles, you name it. Every tiny win, every late-night breakthrough, every bug fix that made me want to hurl my laptop across the room, I celebrated alone. By launch night, I hadn't slept in 3 days, but I was vibrating with adrenaline. This was it. The moment it all finally felt worth it. I booked a small, trendy space downtown. Nothing over the top, just some catered food, a decent speaker, and a slideshow of my app looping on the projector. I'd invited my closest friends, a few amazing early users, and, of course, my family, Mom, Dad, and my older brother, Ezra. I truly hoped they'd finally be proud, or at least curious enough to show up. They'd been skeptical since day one, always asking when I was going to get a real job. As guests started arriving, my eyes kept flicking to the door. My friends were there first, cheering me on, hugging me, telling me how proud they were that I'd stuck it out. The room filled with chatter and music, and I actually started to relax. For the first time in months, I could breathe. But I kept checking my phone, just in case my family was running late. Then I saw it. Ezra's social media post. A boomerang video of champagne glasses clinking, captioned, "Promotion Night." My blood ran cold. I clicked through his story, and there they were, Mom and Dad, laughing, celebrating Ezra's promotion to senior manager. On my launch night. And not a single text telling me they wouldn't make it. It felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. I just stood there, staring at my phone, the party noise around me fading to a distant hum. People were asking me questions about the app, congratulating me, and I smiled, I nodded, but inside, I was burning. They hadn't just skipped my launch. They hadn't even bothered to mention it. When the last guest left, the silence in that empty room crashed over me. The projector still looped my app slides. Empty plates piled high. That's when the texts from them started. "Dad, we need to discuss your company." "Mom, this isn't a real career." "Ezra, congrats on your little project." My hands tightened around my phone. All the exhaustion, the constant dismissal, the years of "when will you settle down" boiled over. I didn't reply immediately. I sat there in the dark, reliving every time they'd brushed me off, every time Ezra's achievements were gold, and mine were just hobbies. But for the first time, I didn't feel like defending myself. I didn't want to explain the value of what I'd built or beg for their approval. My fingers were steady as I typed back one sentence, "Check tomorrow's news." And I meant it. Because tomorrow, everything was going to change. The next morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating like crazy. My head was pounding, not from a hangover, but from the weight of everything I'd bottled up. Their messages from last night were still seared into my brain. More had come in. "Dad, we need to talk today. Ezra has some ideas for how you can make this app more profitable. Let's have a family call." Mom's was sharper. "You should be grateful Ezra is willing to help you before this gets out of hand." And Ezra, of course. "Can you hop on a Zoom call this afternoon? I think I can save you from wasting more time." That's Ezra for you. He didn't just think he was smarter, he thought he was entitled to run my life. He'd been the golden boy forever. Best tutors, private coaches, a shiny new car for his 18th. Me? I got his hand-me-down bike with the bent handlebars. If Ezra wanted dinner out, the whole family went. If I wanted a coding camp, too expensive. 2 months later, Mom paid for Ezra's photography workshop without blinking. I reread their messages, the predictability of it all sickening. Of course, they'd turned my launch, the one moment that was supposed to be mine, into another chance to make it about Ezra. When the call time came, I reluctantly joined. Dad was already there, Mom sipping coffee beside him. Ezra, in his dress shirt and tie, dialed in from work, radiating self-importance. "Not even a hello?" Dad said, starting the interrogation. "Jake, we're worried about you." "This business, it's not a business yet," Mom cut in, her voice gently dismissive. "It's a project. You need stability." Ezra nodded like an expert. "Look, little bro. I'm not saying the app is bad. It's cute, but you need a business plan that makes sense. I have connections who could buy you out for a decent sum. You'd get some money back and move on to something more realistic." I sat there, letting them talk over each other. It was a well-rehearsed play. Mom's gentle but cutting voice, Dad's disappointed sighs, Ezra's smug smirk. "I don't want to sell," I finally said, my voice calm, though my hands were shaking under the table. "This is my company. I'm not cashing out before it even has a chance." Dad pinched the bridge of his nose. "Jake, you've been playing around with this thing for years. Ezra is offering you a chance to turn it into something respectable." "Respectable?" I almost laughed. "You didn't even come to my launch party." That shut them up for a second, but only a second. Mom looked offended. "We were at Ezra's promotion dinner. You know how important that was for his career." "Exactly," Ezra said, leaning back in his chair as if he'd won the argument. "And you should be happy for me instead of holding a grudge." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about last night. It never was. It was about the pattern. Every milestone in my life measured against Ezra's, and mine always falling short. "Jake," Dad said, his voice taking on that tone he used to end arguments. "We just want what's best for you, and what's best is to let someone with more experience handle this before it collapses. Do you want to be 30 and still living like a college kid?" I stared at their faces in the little boxes on the screen, all looking at me like I was the problem. For a moment, the old, familiar guilt crept in. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was foolish. Maybe Ezra did know better. But then I remembered last night. My friends clapping for me. The early users telling me how excited they were. The feeling of seeing something I had built come to life. And that guilt morphed into something else. Anger. Sharper, more focused. "I'm not selling," I said again, louder this time. "And I don't need Ezra's help." Mom's mouth tightened. Dad muttered about me being stubborn. Ezra just shrugged. "Fine," he said casually. "But don't come crying to me when it flops." The call ended a minute later, leaving me staring at a blank screen. It wasn't just the lack of support. It was the way they'd turned my success into a problem they needed to solve. Later that week, I found out through a mutual friend that Ezra was bragging at work about helping his little brother get serious. He was already talking to investors about taking over my idea if I changed my mind. He even posted a picture on LinkedIn of himself at a networking event, captioning it, "Excited about potential tech opportunities in the family." My stomach twisted. He wasn't just inserting himself. He was claiming credit before he'd even done anything. Colleagues congratulated him, called him a visionary. Not one mention of me. And then, the ultimate insult. Mom called. She'd gone ahead and shared some of my pitch deck slides with Ezra so he could shop it around to the right people. "You what?" I gripped the phone until my knuckles went white. "Don't be dramatic, Jake. We're just trying to help you before you make a mistake. It's not your decision to make. Ezra just wants to make sure you don't miss your chance." I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, I stayed up late, going through my files, changing passwords, revoking sharing links, locking everything down. If they wanted to treat me like a child, fine. But they weren't going to hijack my work. Still, a part of me knew this wasn't over. The texts kept coming. Articles about startup failure rates from Dad, Mom saying I was hurting the family, Ezra casually suggesting he could run the company for me to avoid burnout. By the end of the week, I felt under siege. Every ping of my phone made my stomach clench. I started ignoring calls, burying myself in work, anything to keep my mind busy. Then, 3 days later, something happened that made everything snap into focus. It was late evening when I got an email from one of my beta users, someone I didn't know personally. Subject line, "Is this you?" Inside was a screenshot of a pitch deck presentation. My pitch deck. but with Ezra's name on it. Presented at some local entrepreneur meetup. My logo, my slides, my words. I stared at the screen, my chest pounding, hands cold. I must have reread that email 10 times, praying I'd misunderstood. But no. The screenshots were crystal clear. My app's logo, my carefully worded tagline, all under a title slide that read, "Presented by Ezra Collins." A rush of heat crawled up my neck, followed by that hollow, weightless feeling when you've been hit with news so bad your body doesn't know what to do. I immediately called the sender, a soft-spoken beta tester named Isla. "I thought you should know," she said quietly. "I attended this startup networking event tonight, and your brother was the keynote. He said he was leading a new project, and he pitched your app as something he was developing with his team. He even mentioned he might be looking for co-founders and investors soon." I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there, staring into space. My own brother. He'd stood in front of a room full of investors and founders, taken my work, and passed it off as his. When the initial shock wore off, anger came rushing in like a tidal wave. I pulled up LinkedIn, and there it was, a shiny new post from Ezra, photo of him on stage, microphone in hand, my app's home screen projected behind him. Caption: "Thrilled to be sharing the next big thing we're building. Exciting opportunities ahead. Stay tuned." The comments were full of congratulations. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Instead, I took screenshots. Lots of them. Every slide, every comment, every post. The next morning, Mom's texts flooded in. "Ezra did such a great job last night. People were really impressed. Don't be mad. You should be grateful he's putting your little idea on the map." I called her immediately, my voice shaking. "You knew he was going to do this?" "Of course," she said matter-of-factly. "He asked me for the slides. I thought it would be good for you. You're too close to it, Jake. Ezra knows how to present in a way people understand. You gave him my work without asking me." I could barely keep my voice steady. "That's not helping me, Mom. That's stealing." There was a pause, then that calm, infuriating tone she always used when she thought I was being childish. "You always take things so personally. Ezra isn't stealing. He's elevating. He's giving you a platform. Do you really think you could have gotten that many people interested on your own?" I hung up. My hands were trembling. My own mother had sided with Ezra, handing over my intellectual property like it was some school project she could redistribute. Later that afternoon, Ezra called me directly. I almost didn't answer, but a part of me wanted to hear what he would say. "Hey, little bro," he said cheerfully, as if nothing had happened. "Did you see the response we got from the pitch? Pretty exciting, right?" I snapped. "You mean the response you got from stealing my work?" He laughed like I was overreacting. "Come on, man. Don't be like that. I didn't steal anything. I was just testing the waters. Investors want to know there's someone experienced leading a project. You know they'd never trust a solo founder with no track record. I'm doing you a favor. You put your name on it, Ezra. You made it sound like it was your app." He sighed. "Because it will be ours if you stop being stubborn. Look, Jake, you're good at the technical stuff, but let's be honest. You're not a CEO. I can get funding, build a team, scale this thing. You can stay on as the developer and get a nice salary. Everybody wins." I went quiet, my jaw so tight it hurt. "So, your solution is to push me out of my own company." "You wouldn't be pushed out," he said smoothly. "You'd just be supported. Think about it, Jake. You're barely scraping by right now. Bills piling up. No investors. You need me. And if you keep being difficult, you're just going to watch this whole thing die." Something about the way he said it, so casual, so confident, made my blood run cold. This wasn't just Ezra being annoying anymore. This was a hostile takeover attempt, and my parents had practically handed him the keys. I didn't say anything else. I just hung up. The next few days were some of the longest of my life. Everywhere online, I saw Ezra's posts gaining traction. More pictures of him pitching. More comments about how innovative his project was. A tech blog even ran a tiny feature, local entrepreneur Ezra Collins launching promising new app. No mention of me. It got worse. I received an email from a VC firm I'd been courting for months. They thanked me for my time, but said they were already in talks with another founder working on something similar. I knew exactly who they meant. I tried to talk to Dad, hoping he'd at least understand the seriousness of what was happening. He just brushed me off. "You're being dramatic. This is business, Jake. Ezra is helping you get a foot in the door. You should be thanking him." Thanking him? I was incredulous. For stealing my idea? For cutting me out of my own company? Dad's tone hardened. "He's not cutting you out. He's saving you from yourself. You have a habit of biting off more than you can chew. Don't throw away this opportunity because of pride." I left the call shaking with anger. They really didn't see it. Or worse, they did, and they didn't care. The final straw came at the end of the week. I was at a coffee shop, working on a patch, when a notification popped up. Ezra had announced a formal launch date for his company, complete with a press release and an RSVP link for a launch event. The date was 2 weeks from now. I sat there, frozen, my coffee growing cold. He wasn't just taking credit anymore. He was moving ahead without me, with my idea, my code, my design, as if I didn't exist. And for the first time since this all started, I didn't feel hurt. I felt something colder, heavier, sharper. This wasn't going to end with a family call or a polite conversation. This was war. I didn't leave that coffee shop for hours. Just stared at my laptop, my cursor blinking on a line of code I couldn't focus on anymore. The launch event link was still open on my phone. Ezra's smiling face in the banner, the RSVP button glowing like a taunt. I packed up and walked home slowly, the city lights blurring. My apartment looked even smaller than usual. I'd worked so hard in this cramped one-bedroom. Nights on the floor with my laptop. Living off takeout. Staring at these walls through every doubt and every tiny victory. Now it felt like it belonged to someone else. For the next few days, I barely spoke to anyone. My friends checked in after hearing about the launch party disaster, but my replies were short. I didn't want to admit how bad things had gotten. I woke up late, ignored messages, couldn't even look at my code. The app I'd poured myself into felt stolen, and I couldn't bring myself to touch it. What made it worse was how quiet my family had gone. No more texts from Mom, no calls from Dad, not even a smug message from Ezra. It was like they'd moved on without me entirely. The world was cheering him on, while I sat in a dark apartment, watching my savings drain. I thought about selling everything. Not the company, but my stuff. The gaming console, the bike, the old watch Dad gave me. I thought about cashing out what little was left of my emergency fund and just leaving. Moving somewhere cheap, getting a quiet job, disappearing from all of this. The thought was equal parts comforting and crushing. One night, I went for a walk to clear my head and ended up outside my parents' house without even realizing it. Lights were on, silhouettes moved behind the curtains. I stood across the street like a stranger. Through the front window, I saw them, Mom, Dad, Ezra, sitting around the dining table, laughing, wine glasses in hand. So comfortable, so united. For a second, I wanted to march in there and scream until they understood what they had done. But then I imagined the look on their faces, the polite, pitying smiles, the way they'd tell me I was overreacting. I couldn't do it. I turned and walked home, hands shoved deep in my pockets. That night, I lay awake, mind spinning. The anger was still there, but it had cooled into something quieter, something that scared me a little with how calm it felt. I started thinking about the code, about how much of the app's infrastructure was still entirely under my control. The servers, the database, the API keys, all tied to accounts only I had access to. I didn't act on it right away. First, I protected what was left. Pulled every repo offline, encrypted backups, moved everything to a fresh system. I even reached out to a lawyer friend, casually asking what could be done if someone presented my work as their own. Her answer wasn't encouraging. Technically, I had rights, but fighting would be expensive, time-consuming, and a messy legal battle. But the conversation planted a seed. If I couldn't fight him openly yet, maybe I could make sure that when the time came, I had everything I needed to prove this was my work, my code, my idea, my company. I documented everything. Emails, timestamped commits, design files. A paper trail so clear no one could deny it. Meanwhile, I kept my head down. When my parents finally reached out again, a short, clipped message asking if I was ready to be reasonable yet I didn't respond. Ezra sent me his launch invite with a winking emoji. I left it on read. The silence seemed to irritate them more than arguing ever did. A few days later, Dad left a voicemail that started calm but turned sharp. "You're acting immature, Jake. This family has done nothing but support you, and now you're throwing it back in our faces. Ezra is trying to build something for all of us. And you're jeopardizing that with your pride. Think about what kind of example you're setting." I deleted the message, but kept the transcription. Another piece of the puzzle. Another reminder of how they were rewriting the narrative, framing me as the unreasonable one. As the days passed, something shifted in me. The grief was still there, for the relationship I used to think I had with my family, for the simple pride I wanted from them but never got. But beneath that grief was something harder. Determination. I stopped sleeping in, started running again to clear my head. I fixed bugs in the app, not because I had to, but because it reminded me this was mine. Every line of code was a small act of defiance. Every feature I polished was one more thing they couldn't take credit for. One evening, I sat down with a notebook and started mapping things out. If Ezra was going to hold his fake launch in 2 weeks, what could I do? I wasn't ready to strike without a plan, but I could prepare. I could make sure that when the time came, my voice would be louder than his. I stayed up until 3 a.m. sketching ideas, a rail launch plan, a list of press contacts, even a draft of a blog post telling the real story from my perspective. Every word felt like taking back a piece of what they'd stolen. For the first time in days, I felt something like hope. I wasn't ready to go to war yet, but I was done hiding. Ezra's launch date was just over a week away. I stared at the date, then slowly smiled. If Ezra wanted a launch, he was going to get one. The morning after that notebook session, I woke up feeling different. My apartment didn't seem as small. The air didn't feel as heavy. I brewed coffee, sat at my desk, and opened my laptop with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The app stared back at me, the thing I had built from nothing. And for the first time since this mess began, I felt proud again. I started working in deep, focused bursts. It wasn't just coding, it was strategizing for battle. I updated the onboarding process, wrote cleaner documentation, built a back-end dashboard to monitor growth in real time. Every improvement was a quiet promise to myself. If I was going to fight, I'd do it with something polished, something worthy of the attention it was about to get. I also reconnected with the people who actually believed in me. I called a few friends from the launch party, the ones who had stayed until the end, who had congratulated me sincerely, and told them what was going on. To my surprise, they were furious on my behalf. "Dude, that's insane," my friend Marco said. "He literally stole your work. You have to clap back. We'll help you make noise about it." Yeah, Isla, the beta tester who had sent me that email, chimed in. "If you put the real story together, I'll share it everywhere. People need to know who actually built this." That support lit a fire in me. I wasn't as alone as I thought. Over the next few days, I assembled a small group of friends, designers, marketers, people who just wanted to lend a hand. We set up a group chat and started working on a guerrilla launch plan. One friend helped me create a killer landing page that highlighted not just the app, but my journey, the late nights, the obstacles, the small wins. Another offered to shoot a promo video for free. We filmed in my tiny apartment, me talking straight to the lens, explaining why I built this app. I was nervous, but when we played it back, I barely recognized myself. I didn't look like the exhausted, defeated guy from a week ago. I looked like someone with a vision. At the same time, I quietly started reaching out to early users and small tech bloggers, sharing sneak peeks of new features, inviting them to be part of the official launch. Some had already seen Ezra's posts and were confused. "Are you two working together?" they asked. I calmly explained, "No, this is my company. I'm the founder. The other person is my brother who presented my work without permission." Most were sympathetic. A few even promised to write about the real story once I went public. And then, almost by chance, I got a message that changed everything. It was from a small but influential startup newsletter I'd subscribed to for years. One of their writers had heard about my app through a mutual contact and wanted to feature it in their next issue, but only if I could provide an interview and some screenshots by the weekend. My heart pounded as I typed back, absolutely. This was it. The first real media attention for my app, and it was going to come out before Ezra's fake launch. The interview went better than I could have hoped. The writer asked smart questions, and I spoke openly about the challenges of being a solo founder, building something from scratch with no safety net. I didn't mention Ezra by name. Not yet. But I made sure it was crystal clear who the founder was. When the article went live, the effect was immediate. Traffic to my site spiked. Beta signups doubled in a single day. People were tweeting about the app, tagging me, leaving comments like, "Can't wait to try this." Finally, a solution to this problem. And then, almost poetically, one of Ezra's LinkedIn contacts shared the article, tagging me this time, not him. The caption read, "Big congrats to Jake Collins for building something so impressive." I won't lie, I screenshotted that post and stared at it for a while. But the best part wasn't just the attention. It was the data. I watched in real time as new users signed up and actually started using the app. The engagement numbers were climbing higher than they had ever been during the beta phase. Whatever Ezra thought he had, it wasn't this. At night, I worked on the final preparations for my own launch event. It wasn't going to be a fancy ballroom like Ezra had booked, but it didn't need to be. I found a local co-working space that let me rent their biggest conference room. I sent out private invitations to early users, bloggers, friends, and even a few small investors I had been cautiously in touch with. I kept my family completely out of the loop. They didn't get an invite. They didn't get a heads up. They could read about it in the paper like everyone else. As the days ticked down, I noticed a shift, not just in the project, but in myself. I was waking up early again, energized. I was eating properly, exercising, sleeping better. For months, I had been living under the shadow, letting their opinions dictate how I felt about myself. But now, I felt like I was steering my own life again. The night before the launch, I stayed late at the co-working space, putting the finishing touches on the presentation. It was simple but powerful, real screenshots, real testimonials, real results. No corporate buzzwords, no empty promises, just proof. When I got home, I checked my phone and saw another message from Ezra. "Hope you're coming to the launch tomorrow. It'll be good for the family to be united on stage." I didn't respond. Instead, I closed the message, plugged in my phone, and went to bed smiling. Because tomorrow wasn't his day anymore. It was mine. And by the time he found out what I had planned, it would already be too late for him to stop it. The morning of my launch day, I woke up before my alarm. For once, that knot of dread in my stomach was gone, replaced by something calmer, heavier, like standing at the top of a hill, knowing gravity was finally about to do the rest. I brewed coffee, put on my crisp, simple outfit, and reviewed my checklist one last time. Slides ready. Landing page queued to go live. My friends' group chat was buzzing. They were already at the co-working space, setting up chairs and testing the projector. As I got ready to head out, my phone lit up with another message from Ezra. "Just a reminder, doors open at 6 o'clock for the launch. Would mean a lot if you came." I stared at the screen, shaking my head. He really thought I was going to sit in the audience while he took a victory lap with my work. Instead, I opened my laptop and scheduled the newsletter I had written the night before. It wasn't long, just a short but clear statement of what I had built and why. It included screenshots, links to the live app, and a personal note from me. This has been 2 years in the making. I built this from the ground up, with no investors, no backing, no safety net, just a vision and a lot of sleepless nights. Today, I'm proud to share it with the world. At the bottom, I added a subtle but important line. If you've seen anyone else presenting this as their work, they are not affiliated with my company. Then I scheduled it to go live right as Ezra's event began. When I arrived at the co-working space, the energy in the room was electric. Friends, people I barely knew, chatting about the app. A photographer friend setting up his camera. There was even a local tech reporter who'd seen the newsletter teaser and decided to cover the event. "This is bigger than we thought," Marco said, grinning as he handed me a coffee. "You ready?" "More than ready," I said. And I meant it. The launch went better than I could have imagined. The room was full. The demo went off without a hitch. And when I showed the live user numbers ticking upward, people actually clapped. When it was over, people came up to shake my hand, ask questions, take selfies. By the time I got home that evening, the app servers were humming with traffic. My inbox was full of inquiries from small investors and even one well-known tech podcast that wanted to feature me. But the best part hadn't even happened yet. Around 6:30 p.m., right in the middle of Ezra's event, my newsletter went out. Within minutes, I started seeing it shared on social media. People were tagging me, congratulating me, quoting my line about, "If you've seen anyone else presenting this as their work." It didn't call Ezra out by name, but it didn't have to. By 7 p.m., I got the first angry text. "Mom, what did you just send out?" Ezra is furious. People are asking questions at his event. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another text. "Ezra, what are you doing? You're ruining everything again." I still didn't reply. Instead, I opened my analytics dashboard and watched as user signups surged again. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. People at Ezra's event were clearly checking their phones, clicking through, and signing up for my version of the app. And then something happened that almost made me laugh out loud. Someone attending Ezra's launch, maybe out of spite, maybe just curious, live tweeted the whole thing. One tweet read, "So apparently the guy on stage isn't even the founder. Just found the actual creator's launch post." Awkward. The replies were brutal. People were tagging Ezra, asking for clarification, some even accusing him of fraud. By the end of the night, my story was trending locally. But that wasn't the only thing that shifted that week. The following morning, I woke up to an email from a well-known investor I had admired for years. She wrote, "I saw what happened yesterday. I've been following your app for a while, and I'd like to talk about funding. Your story is exactly what this space needs." I read it 3 times just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. This wasn't just about beating Ezra anymore. This was about building something bigger than I had ever dreamed. That same day, the startup newsletter that had featured me earlier decided to run a follow-up piece. This time, they didn't hold back. The headline was blunt: "Local founder faces family battle over stolen startup idea." Here's his side of the story. The article went into detail, citing screenshots, timestamps, and interviews with people who knew the timeline. They didn't outright vilify Ezra, but they didn't make him look good either. Within hours, Ezra's LinkedIn post started disappearing. The event photos vanished. Even the RSVP link for his launch went dead. But my phone, it didn't stop buzzing. More investors, more users, more people asking how they could support me. By the end of the week, I had signed my first real term sheet. It wasn't life-changing money, not yet, but it was enough to secure a runway, hire a couple of contractors, and give the app the boost it needed. When I told Marco, he nearly tackled me with a hug. "You did it, man. You actually turned this around." But I wasn't done yet. While Ezra was licking his wounds, I was quietly putting something much bigger into motion. One of the investors I met had a connection at a major tech conference, the kind that gets press coverage far beyond our city. They offered me a speaking slot in the next month's lineup, right on the main stage. I said yes. And as I closed my laptop that night, I realized just how much had changed. A few weeks ago, I was sitting in a coffee shop wondering if I should just walk away. Now I had users, funding, media coverage, and soon a platform to tell the entire world exactly who built this. Ezra had tried to take my company from me. Now I had the power to take everything back and maybe, just maybe, to make sure he could never try something like this again. The month leading up to the tech conference felt like moving through a storm I had finally learned to navigate. For the first time in a long time, I was calm, focused, but calm because I knew exactly what I was building toward. This wasn't about getting even anymore. It was about showing everyone, including my family, exactly who I was and what I was capable of, without their approval, without their interference, and especially without Ezra trying to put his fingerprints on my work. I spent those weeks refining every detail of my app, my pitch, my presentation. My small but growing team helped me prepare live demos and mock Q&As. I practiced so much that I could deliver the talk in my sleep. But the real revenge wasn't just going to be on stage. It was going to be in how I told the story. 2 days before the conference, I received a text from Ezra. Are you really speaking at TechSonf? I just got word and my inbox is blowing up. What are you planning to say? I stared at the message for a long time, then just sent back one line. Don't worry, I'll make sure people know who built this. He didn't reply. The night before my talk, I barely slept. Not because I was nervous, though there were some butterflies, but because I felt a strange sense of anticipation, like standing backstage before a big show. This wasn't just about Ezra anymore. This was my chance to step out of the shadow of my family entirely. When the day came, I walked into the conference hall and felt the energy buzzing. Hundreds of people milling around, startup founders pitching ideas, investors scribbling notes. My slot was right after lunch, prime time, right when the room would be full again. I waited backstage, laptop in hand, while the speaker before me wrapped up. Then the MC introduced me. Next up, we have Jake Collins, founder and developer of AppName, a project that's been getting a lot of attention lately for its innovative approach and incredible backstory. The applause washed over me as I stepped onto the stage, the bright lights making it impossible to see anything beyond the first few rows. I took a deep breath and started speaking. I began with the app itself, what problem it solved, the journey of building it, the technical challenges I'd faced. But about halfway through, I shifted gears. I want to share something a little personal, I said, letting my voice drop just enough to make the room lean in. Because building this wasn't just a technical journey for me. It was a test of everything I thought I knew about perseverance, about trust, even about family. The room was quiet now, waiting. I built this alone. For 2 years, I lived and breathed this project. And just when I was ready to share it with the world, someone very close to me tried to take it. They stood on a stage, presented my work as their own, and told me I wasn't capable of leading my own company. A ripple went through the audience. You could feel the tension tighten. I could have given up then. I almost did. But instead, I decided to launch anyway. And what happened next proved something I'll never forget. When you build something authentic, something real, the truth has a way of finding its way to the surface. I clicked to the next slide, screenshots of the app's growth since the launch, the spike in user numbers, the media coverage. The audience started to murmur, impressed. Today, we have thousands of active users, growing every day. We've secured funding. We're hiring. And we're here because we refuse to let someone else write our story. I ended with a line I had practiced dozens of times, so if anyone ever tells you that you don't deserve what you've built, that you should step aside and let someone else take credit, prove them wrong. Build louder. Build better. Make them watch. The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was thunderous. People were on their feet, clapping and cheering. My heart pounded, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was relief. When I stepped off stage, my phone was blowing up. The talk had been recorded and was already making the rounds on social media. People were quoting that last line, tagging me, calling it one of the most inspiring talks of the conference. And then, almost poetically, Ezra texted me again. You didn't have to humiliate me like that. I typed back slowly, deliberately. I didn't say your name once. If you feel humiliated, that's on you. He didn't reply. Later that night, I posted a photo from the conference, me on stage mid-sentence, the crowd behind me. My caption was simple. 2 years ago, this was just an idea. Yesterday, it was almost taken from me. Today, it belongs to everyone who believed. Thank you for helping me prove that the work speaks for itself. Within hours, it had thousands of likes, hundreds of shares. And buried among the comments were messages from people I hadn't heard from in years, old friends, former coworkers, even one of my college professors, all telling me how proud they were. But the most satisfying moment came the next morning when I opened my inbox and saw an email forwarded to me by a friend who had attended Ezra's event weeks earlier. It was from one of the investors he'd been courting. Ezra, after seeing yesterday's talk and reviewing the documentation provided by the actual founder, we're withdrawing our interest. We invest in founders who lead with integrity. Best of luck. I stared at that email for a long time, then closed my laptop and just sat there smiling. Because this wasn't just revenge. This was reclamation. This was me taking back my story, my work, my life. And I had a feeling Ezra and my parents were finally starting to realize they couldn't control me anymore. But there was still one last thing I needed to do. Something that would make it absolutely clear, once and for all, that the days of them dismissing me, talking over me, treating me like a side character in my own life, those days were over. And I already knew exactly when and where I was going to do it. 2 weeks after the conference, the final blow came, and it came quietly. Not with shouting, not with a big confrontation, but with a single piece of paper. I was sitting at my desk, answering emails from a few new angel investors, when I got a notification from the state's business registry. I opened it, thinking it was just a routine filing confirmation. And there it was. Ezra's LLC, the one he had hastily registered to launch his company, had been officially dissolved. It shouldn't have felt as satisfying as it did, but it was like exhaling for the first time in months. He hadn't called me. He hadn't texted. He had just quietly shut the whole thing down. But I wasn't naive enough to think that meant everything was truly over. No, my family wasn't done yet. That Sunday, my parents invited me to dinner. Their first attempt to bring me over since everything had happened. For a moment, I considered ignoring the invitation. But then I thought about how far I'd come, about how much of this had been lived in silence, about how many times I'd swallowed my pride to keep the peace. No more swallowing anything. When I walked into the house, the air was tense. Ezra was already there, sitting stiffly at the dining table. Mom was bustling around the kitchen like nothing had happened. Dad stood with his arms crossed. For a second, it almost felt like one of those forced family dinners from years ago where they pretended everything was fine, until Mom finally broke the silence. "Jake," she said softly, setting down a plate. "We just want to talk." I sat across from Ezra, who wouldn't meet my eyes. "Then talk," I said. Dad cleared his throat. "We think things got out of hand. The posts, the articles, the conference, you didn't have to make it so public." Ezra's reputation took a big hit. I let out a short laugh. He pitched my work as his own. He tried to take my company. "And you want me to apologize because people found out?" Mom winced. "You didn't have to embarrass the family." I leaned forward, my voice calm but steady. "You embarrassed yourselves. Not once in this entire process did any of you ask me what I wanted. You decided you knew better. You tried to sell my work out from under me. And when I said no, you treated me like I was ungrateful. I had to fight just to get credit for something I built with my own hands." Ezra finally looked up then, his jaw tight. "I was trying to help you." "No," I said. "You were trying to own me. You couldn't stand that I did something without you, so you took it. And now you have to live with the fact that everyone knows it wasn't yours." For a moment, no one spoke. The room was thick with the sound of it. The truth just hanging there, undeniable. Then I stood. "You know what's funny?" I said, almost smiling. "I don't even need you to say you're sorry. I don't need you to like me. I don't need anything from you anymore. Because the people who matter, they know the truth. And they showed up for me." I took my jacket from the back of the chair, walked to the door, and stopped with my hand on the knob. "You wanted me to step aside and let someone else take over my story. Instead, you just made it bigger. You made me bigger." When I opened the door, Mom said softly, "So that's it. You're just walking away." I turned back, looked at each of them, my mom still clutching the dish towel, my dad frowning, Ezra staring at the table like it might save him. "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's it." And then I walked out, shutting the door behind me. I didn't look back. That night, I sat in my apartment, the city lights glowing outside my window, and I scheduled one last post, a photo from the conference stage, me smiling in front of a slide that said, "Founder Jake Collins." The caption was just one line: "They tried to take my story." I wrote a better ending. When I woke up the next morning, it had gone viral. For the first time in years, I felt completely, unmistakably free. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more crazy Reddit tales, and ring the bell so you never miss the next one. And hey, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you would have done in this situation.